Welcome back, everybody, to Somatic Tip Wednesday, where I share with you some of the self-somatic exercises by Peter Levine, and honestly, almost, I don't want to say word for word, but what I'm sharing with you is pretty close to exactly the way that Peter teaches it. So for those of you that are just here instead, I'm basically just like a transmitter for this information. So if you were not here last week, I would recommend starting with that video. The first video is the one with the curly hair and it's like on top of my head. Hey everybody, welcome. And so today we're kind of going to do a continuation of last week, just a little piece at the end that I didn't have time to include. And then we're gonna do today's exercise, which is actually standing. Now, I'm just gonna start off and say this is not a video for your mind to kind of mentally masturbate to. I do love using that phrase, I won't lie. I know that a lot of times when we get on someone's live or social media thing, it's like, yeah, we want that knowledge, we want something for our mind to chew on. And I'm purposefully doing this series because I would like us to start to work on other things. Somatic exercises are super important in building a foundation with ourselves. And it's super important in trauma recovery for some of the reasons that I'm going to name. So let's just hop right in. The second part of the first part that I shared earlier is so just a little recap, right? We were doing the tapping on the different parts of the body as well as squeezing, to begin to get a sense for our own skin and muscle level boundary, because as we know, right, trauma has this way of disrupting our boundaries with ourselves and other people, and also our body as a container. And so today we're going to extend that container a little bit out. So like I said, before we were working with skin and muscle level, and in this, we're going to work with more of an energetic boundary. So something that you can do is to find a comfortable seat on the ground. And if you don't have a string, I can't imagine that you would have showed up to this video with a string. You can just do this in an imagined way, but I would really recommend literally getting, I don't care if it's shoestrings that you tie together or a piece of yarn, a ball of yarn, something. Maybe pause this video if you're watching the replay and then get your yarn and come back. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna find a comfortable seat. And as you start to come into yourself, you may even begin today with that other exercise so you have more of a sense of your own skin, bodily boundary and container. And you're gonna get a sense for and feel into about how far out your own personal energy field extends. Is it arm distance? Is it 3-4 feet? However far out that feels. And then you're going to place that string around your body, the front, the left side, the back, the right side, all the way around. And you're going to have yourself in the center of this circle. So you can visually see how far out with the string your own personal energy field goes. And then if you want, you could, like I said, you could start this exercise by the squeezing all the way through your whole body like I did in the first video, or the tapping, or you could do that once you've created this container for yourself. Now, to take it a step farther, what you can do is, let's say there's somebody who you have a really good relationship with. There's two different ways to do this. So somebody that you might have a really good relationship with, somebody that you trust, that feels safe to you. I want you to imagine saying to them, right? And you're saying to yourself as well. You can say it to yourself, or imagine saying this to someone else. This is my boundary. This is as far out as my energy field extends. And no one is allowed to enter my boundary unless invited or unless I ask them to. And then just take a moment and get a sense for what that feels like on the inside. what does that feel like to be able to have that? And like I said, if you practice saying this to somebody who you have a really good relationship with, somebody who's safe and comfortable, that might really also kind of amplify this feeling of safety that you have, that this is going to be respected. So the next kind of layer that you can do is maybe there's somebody that you have boundary issues with. Maybe there's somebody that either you tend to encroach on their boundaries or they encroach on yours, or maybe it's a two-way street. And so you can either do the imagined thing where you imagine what would it be like for somebody to ignore that boundary and track and see how you might respond in that situation. Or you can actually practice real time with this person. So if this is somebody, and you can do this with somebody who's safe too, right? I would even suggest that first, and really establishing that foundation maybe before going in with somebody that you have this boundary issue with. But if they're willing to do this exercise with you, maybe they're also interested in kind of developing their own sense of boundary, especially in relationship, right? Because the skin boundary, the muscle boundary is our container for our own sensations and experiences. And when we're working with this kind of string exercise around our body, we're working with the relational field. And so you may actually do this with another person where they go into their own string, and you decide how far or how close are both of your circles this far apart? Are they? And again, then eventually you might take away the string. You might just start to practice with your own physical body and emanating that field, right? The string is just to show you, it's to have a physical representation of how far your own energy field extends around you. And so you might practice and saying to yourselves, this is my energetic boundary. This is how far or close I'm comfortable having another person. And if somebody were to come over this line, like you're not allowed, right, into this boundary unless you are invited. And the more that we can start to practice this, I'm going to go into the whole second piece of this, which is really the focus of today. It's kind of 50-50, but practice is so important. This is not just something that these self-somatic exercises are not something that we just want to do one time and then just say, well, that's it, right? We have to continuously bring ourselves into these practices, because for those of us who are renegotiating trauma, the breach has lived with us for so long. That's really how we move through the world. So in order to kind of rewire the relationship that we have with our body and the relationship energetically that we have with our own field and other people's field, our capacity to be firm in our own container, whether this is just a skin container or an energetic container, really does take repetitive practice. So I would suggest maybe starting with the first video, doing that every day. Maybe you start to work in the second video here, but this can be incredibly helpful. It's not like anything crazy. This isn't some crazy galactic piece of information. This is really foundational, easy stuff. And sometimes people are like, oh, it's almost like too easy. But that's the point. That's how we build a foundation with ourselves. And I want to say one last thing about this before I move into the second part of this, which is that the energetic boundary, as well as the skin kind of boundary, and the connection that these different parts of our body have to each other, right? Sometimes we can feel like a little dissociated, like this isn't really connected to this. And so as we do that squeezing and that tapping, like I said in the first video, we're really connecting these different points of our body to each other so that we can start to come into a sense of a coherent whole organism. But this is something that we can do covertly. We can do this in public when people have no idea what we're doing. We could do this in the company of another person, where we may just be we may be in the line at the grocery store and you may be giving your arm a little squeeze there, right? You may just be, yes, here's my boundary, here's my body, here's my container. And the more that we practice that, the more readily integrated and available this is going to be for situations where we really, really need it. Okay, so let's take a pause and go into the second. Let me make sure that there was nothing that I missed. Okay. One other thing that you can do with the squeezing and stuff is like let's say when you're touching your calf or something like that, you can go, this is my calf. It helps me to stand my ground. Name what it is that this part of your body helps you to do. It helps me to move quickly and act quickly. My elbow. It gives me elbow room, right? Like that, like on a plane or something when you want your elbow space, elbow room. My elbow. It helps me to take room and take space up that I'm allowed to take up, right? There's no right way to do this. Okay. So naming its function. All right. So let's get into to really what today's video, that was kind of part 2 of part 1, which is around grounding. Very foundational, very basic, literally the foundation. Because when we have something like trauma happen, it takes the ground out from underneath us. We can literally feel like there is no ground beneath our feet. This person says, this practice has been so helpful since you shared last week. Oh, yay, you're doing it. Good. Okay. So 2 things that we're going to work with today. I'm actually going to stand up and we're going to do this together if you're interested. And so 2 things we're working with is grounding and finding our center of gravity. Because like I said, we can get knocked off of our center of gravity or feel like there's no ground beneath us with trauma and renegotiating that. So, all right, let me see if I can do this without flashing you guys. Okay. Let me pull this up here. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is as you come to standing, I want you to feel your feet on the ground, almost like a suction cup, like a lizard or something climbing a wall. You know how they... So feel into the 4 corners of your feet. Feel that sort of suction cup if you can. Notice when you stand up what the quality of your legs are like. Is there like a little bounce in your legs? Or do they feel quite stiff or rigid? So get a sense for that. And as you've got these suction cup feet, what we're going to begin to do is just from the ankles, sway side to side from the ankles. And as you do that, you might place a hand over your belly here. Really, your center of gravity tends to be right here around the pelvis area in the core of your body. So you might place a hand here as you're swaying side to side from the ankles and staying grounded and connected to your feet. Just get a sense for where you can kind of catch that center of gravity. And if you lose it for a minute, just see if you can find that again. That really gentle sway. Notice the rest of your body as you're doing this as well. The impact that the grounding has, if you're able to. And now we're going to do a little forwards and backwards. So really gently, right? We don't fall forward or fall backwards, but from the ankle again, just move forward and backwards a little bit. And this again is going to help us to kind of notice that point where your body kind of catches. That's your center of gravity. And you might experiment with back and forth, forward, backwards. And as we are here to reestablish ground. We're reestablishing safety, knowing that we can't be so easily knocked off our feet, so easily swept sideways, so that when we come into circumstances, so that when thoughts come into our being, we encounter certain people, we encounter certain sensations within our body, that we are more readily able to, by combining the first part of this and the other video and this, we're more readily able to feel the container, to feel the ground, to feel our own personal boundary. It's going to help us to feel a lot safer in encountering these things, whether they're internally or externally generated thoughts, emotions, people, or circumstances. So go ahead and just maybe pause for a moment. You're welcome to do that for as long as you'd like. You may do that for 3, 4, 5 minutes in the morning to really get a sense for your own body, right? Just to bring yourself in. So the last little piece that I'm going to touch on, and Peter speaks about this as well in the second self-somatic audio, is animals and how we can utilize animals for grounding, because cats, dogs, animals are incredibly grounding, right? They are grounded. You watch them get up, walk around, like plop down on the floor. And so something that you might practice if you have an animal at home. If you don't, you might work with the image channel, or you might even work with, he never suggested this, but this just came to my mind, some kind of a really soft, plush, fluffy, like stuffed animal, and then using your imagination to sense into that animal type grounding. And so what you can do if you have a cat or a dog, I don't know, maybe you have a sheep, I don't know, or a horse, horses are super grounding too, is to just place your hand on the animal in a way that's comfortable for both of you. Start to attune yourself to that animal. Notice its breath. Notice its heartbeat. Notice its rhythm. And even as I'm talking about that, I just took a nice deep breath. And so as you've got this rhythm, you could also try laying your head down. If you have a dog, my cat would never allow me to do that. Sometimes I try to sneak in a little, but she's not having it. So, but if you have a dog that really, maybe try laying your head on its chest. And again, just see if you can listen to the heartbeat, listen to the breathing. And as you come into that rhythm together, you might feel yourself coming into more safety and connection and grounding to your own body. There's a reason why they bring animals in as therapy. There's a reason why, I just lost my train of thought. Therapy animals. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, animals are super grounding, so we can resource them. That's really all. Oh yeah, okay, I remember what I was going to say. So there are studies that have been done on people petting cats, and I'm assuming that the same would be for dogs. I just remember it specifically being about cats. And that it actually lowers a person's blood pressure, it lowers their heart rate, and it does start to tip a person into parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest state. So you may notice that your animal even comes to you when you're stressed out, right? They're trying to co-regulate with you. You might intuitively go to your animal when you're stressed out to sort of ground. They have this really incredible ability to just take these kind of frenetic energies and not absorb them, but ground them back into the earth. So yeah, that's actually proven that it does lower your blood pressure, which again, back to the therapy animals thing, is why that makes so much sense, right? It's really helpful for stabilization. That's all I have for today. Next week probably won't be like a hybrid, so I'll just have one clear exercise through and through. Yeah, Wednesday mornings. So I will see you next Wednesday. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and talk to you later.